the 21st report has been published by United Nations on Kailasa. It is a triple victory. First, the 21st time, they have acknowledged the persecution Kailasa and the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism have gone through. Second, the 6th time, they have recognized and acknowledged the Juridical Statehood of Kailasa. Third,
and the third is this report covers elaborately the 2000 years of persecution of Hindus, particularly the last 200 years of the colonization era and the post-colonization era have been covered and recognized by this report. And this is significant because this brings the legitimacy of the suffering that all the 2 billion Hindus and our ancestors had to go through during the colonial era, and even now we are impacted by it. The biggest impact of it is the loss of Hindu sovereignty, the loss of 56 Hindu nations that existed prior to 1947, that existed at the end of the glorious Hindu civilization.
Of course, the global Hindus are very curious to know about the report. It is available on all social media platforms of the Kailasa. Please get there. But we will present you more facts, interesting facts, and history behind the reports. So this has been published by United Nations for a global call for concrete action for the elimination of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance, and the comprehensive implementation of and follow-up to the Durban Declaration and Program of Action. Kailasa made its efforts to present to the world and be a voice for the 2 billion Hindu diaspora. As we all know, that it is the 2000 years of persecutions Kailasa have faced, Hinduism have faced. And this was the yet another time, 21st time, United Nations have recognized it. Yes, go ahead.
And the biggest part is the intricacies, the nuances, the details of the persecution of Hindus are presented. We are talking about racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, but from where did it originated? It originated from the time of colonization. It originated from the colonization origin, the British colonial origin of the caste system, which has been imposed on the Hindus. We are always gaslighted by the Hindu music terrorists, Hindu music extremists, calling Hindus as castes. But the caste word itself does not exist in Hinduism. It is a colonial construct that was forced on us in 1871 by the forced entry of casteism by the colonial policies. This report exposes this reality, and it's for the first time this reality has been acknowledged at the international level. And this is a big significant achievement, not just for Kailasa, it is a big achievement for all 2 billion Hindus who are victims to this gaslighting done by the Hindu music terrorists.
Yes, so when we take 2000 years of colonial route before that, in the persecutions done on Hinduism, of course, during the Mughal invasions, they have destroyed the physical infrastructure of Kailasa. But during the colonial time, they have intellectually destroyed Kailasa and the Hindus all around the world. See, by these colonizers, they have strategically and cunningly disordered the Hindu kingdoms and introduced this caste system. As we was told earlier, let me quote it from the what report has been said. In 1971, the word caste was used by the colonial government to force people groups into the pseudo-identity frameworks based on the surname, appearance, facial features, etc. So by using this, they made a legislative act called Criminal Tribes Act. See, the worst part of this is the Hindu monks, the sannyasis are by default made as the criminals, treated as the criminals under this act. So what happens? When you put this act on the sannyasis, the entire lineage of the Hinduism falls. Because the very Hinduism is fundamentally rooted on the Guru-disciple relationships, Guru-Shishya Parampara. The sannyasis are the standing authority. Even during all the persecutions, sannyasis stood and protected the Hinduism from all the attacks.
Sannyasis protected Hinduism by their life. By putting their life, they protected the Vishwanath temple, they protected all our enlightened ecosystems. And precisely that sannyas order was attacked by this CTA Act of 1871. And it did not end there. Even after 1947, even to date, various forms of CTA Act the criminal tribes act still exist and still are applicable in the South Asian subcontinent countries and still torture the Hindus living over there. This is the impact. Very systematically, in multiple fronts, the colonizations had destroyed the Hindu sovereignty. The 56 Hindu nation, all the Hindu states were destroyed, dismantled. The very social fabric which made the Hindu civilization function together, coexisting and helping each other, that whole social fabric was shattered and broken. And this report systematically exposes this step by step. It goes further to the time of independence, step by step, leading how the systematic destruction happened. As we already know, during the Mughal invasions, the physical destruction happened. During the British colonization era, the intellectual destruction happened. The whole social fabric was dismantled. The sovereignty of the Hindu nations was torn apart. And then after 1947, what happens? How does this continues? The entire thing is revealed in this report. Let me quote from the report. It presents that Hindu civilization has for the last 2000 years gone through a massive Hindu Holocaust, resulting in the loss of 56 Hindu nations that covered 6 million kilometers square of South Asia, and it was a massacre of more than 4 million. It was a massacre of more than 500 million Hindus. 4 million Hindus were enslaved. More than 160 million Hindus were starved to death. And these are all official reports from the colonial era which acknowledge so many lives were lost.
And I want to tell the viewers that how it is relevant for all of you. Of course, this is 2000 years of data, but what is happening today? Kailasa is facing this racial discrimination from this deep state element medias, anti-Hindu medias, anti-Sikh extremists, and anti-phobic elements. How? Because today Kailasa is the re-establishment of this entire Varnashram system. Of course, today even the politicians use this caste system to discriminate their own system. But Kailasa is the re-establishment of this Hindu kingdom. By stating that, by discriminating Kailasa, by using the word it's a fictional nation, they are putting the racial onto the Kailasa. It is an abuse. It is a violation of fundamental rights of the 2 billion Hindu diaspora. And as we all know that many of the South Asian countries, their very judicial system has been corrupted or influenced by the deep state elements. And apart from this, these medias are corrupted by the politicians as well. So that is why there is almost like 17,000 plus hours of hate speech has been done against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and Kailasa.
And let us understand how systematically with the caste system alone the Hindus are attacked even to date. Throughout the world, anti-Hindu, Hindu music legislations are passed. Hindus are treated discriminately just using this caste system which was forced upon us. First of all, the 4 Varnashrama system is about a fluid classification system which is dependent on a person's activism and his pursuits of life. Whether he wants to excel in business, whether he wants to excel in education, whether he wants to excel in statecraft, or whether he wants to excel in his profession. Depending on that, this Varnashrama Dharma empowers each and every individual with a customized path for professional excellence and enlightenment together. However, this beautiful, empowering Varnashrama Dharma was faultily generalized, and 5,000 communities and 15,000 sub-communities of Hinduism were faultily generalized into the 4 Varnashrama orders, which is a complete deviation from the written scriptures and the practice of Hindus. And what happened subsequently? With this distortion, they destroyed our social fabric. With this distortion, they introduced their Hindu music ideologies into our community. They poisoned our community. And finally, after poisoning the Hindus, they blamed for the whole mess upon us and gaslighted us. And now the present day generation believes that the caste system is of Hindu origin, whereas it is not.
And more than this, that in this Varnashram system, the abductions, that removal of systems and putting the Criminal Tribe Act have made many Hindu sovereign entities to leave the country, exile the country. The very government was exiled. Of course, we have spoken about the 21st report, which spoke about and acknowledged the persecutions done against Kailasa and the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. We're gonna speak about how they have acknowledged and recognized the 6th time of Juridical Statehood of Kailasa in a short break. So please stay tuned with us. We're going to bring more facts from you on this 21st report from Kailasa.
Around 5,000 years ago, at the end of Mahabharat War, the ancient enlightened Hindu civilization consisted of 10,000 Hindu traditions, or sampradayas, that existed in 56 Hindu nations, 200 Hindu kingdoms, 1,700 Hindu provinces that covered more than 6 million kilometers square of Asia. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, SPH, BHAGAVAN Nithyananda Paramashivam, is the reviver of Kailasa, this ancient enlightened Hindu civilizational nation. Kailasa is an unbroken cultural, religious, historical, civilizational, and sovereign continuation and revival of multiple of these historical Hindu sovereign states and Hindu ecclesiastical entities. The unbroken continuity of these ancient Hindu nations through Kailasa results in the legal recognition of Kailasa as per the international customary law, particularly the doctrine of continuity. The international law, the doctrine of continuity, implies that upheavals and revolutions within a country, changes in government, territorial adjustments, measures taken during military occupation, or other internal transformations do not negate the existence of the country, do not affect the legal personality and international obligations of the country or state. The Vienna Convention on Succession of States in respect of treaties, 1978, addresses these principles of the doctrine of continuity as it outlines international law during situation of state succession or continuation. International law recognizes a state's legal personality by recognizing its identity. This perspective extends even during the period when the given state or country is annexed or occupied by a foreign power. Even in such cases, the legal personality of the state is considered to persist, enabling its subsequent re-establishment. Historical examples dating back to the 18th century include cases like Portugal and Genoa that were re-established after the Vienna Congress of 1815. More recent examples include countries such as Poland, Ethiopia, Czechoslovakia, Albania, and Austria that were re-established after World War II. Even when a nation is deprived of its territory, the nation continues to exist. Its sovereignty and international and temporal leader of Tibet exemplifies this principle. In 1959, the Dalai Lama was exiled and forced to flee. Despite the challenges faced, the Dalai Lama continues to advocate for the preservation of Tibetan culture and garners worldwide support for Tibetan autonomy on the global stage. Similarly, from 1309 to 1376, the Pope of Catholicism had been in exile in Avignon. Despite this, he was recognized as the head of state as well as head of the church and given full privileges of the position after their return to Rome. Even in 1861, much of the papal territories had been lost, leaving the Pope with no sovereign territory other than the papal residence and related buildings. Yet his temporal powers were still acknowledged. He was recognized as a head of state, and later, the Lateran Treaty of 1929 formally re-established papal sovereignty over the Vatican City. The Sovereign Order of Malta further exemplifies this principle, retaining international recognition as a sovereign entity despite the permanent loss of their territory upon Napoleon's invasion in June 1798. Despite such permanent loss of territory, the sovereignty and the international legal personality of the Sovereign Order of Malta continue to persist. Much later in 1894, the order settled in Rome and acquired two properties, the Magistral Palace and the Magistral Villa that received extraterritorial status. Today, the order maintains diplomatic relations with 112 countries, issues its own diplomatic passports, currency, stamps, and vehicle registration plates, and has been granted observer status in the United Nations. All these examples of state re-establishment illustrate the principle of continuity of states, as per international law, that a state's legal personality persists over time. A nation continues to exist even after a complete loss of territory. A far more striking example is of the oceanic countries, which are under the threat of their entire nation being drowned and submerged due to rising sea levels owing to global warming. In response to such existential threat of climate change, Pacific Island nations, including Tuvalu, have enacted constitutional amendments and made international declarations affirming that their nation and their sovereign rights will continue to persist, despite their entire territory being lost to the sea. This proactive stance is highlighted in the Constitution of Tuvalu Act 2023 and the Pacific Islands Forum Declaration of 2021. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, BHAGAVAN Nithyananda Paramashivam, through the line of succession is the present 203rd Emperor of the Hindu Sovereign Kingdom of Surangi Samrajya. He was crowned on the 31st of December 2004 at the age of 26. Thus, by very same principles of the doctrine of continuity, through which the international legal personality of Portugal, Genoa, Poland, Ethiopia, Czechoslovakia, Albania, Austria, Vatican, Tibet, Sovereign Order of Malta, and several other nations has been recognized despite having undergone a period of exile, annexation, occupation by a foreign power, or despite loss of territory. The SPH Nityananda Paramashivam, through well-established legal and historical facts about the Hindu sovereign state of the Surangi Samrajyam, derives all sovereign rights and powers of the royal lineage of the Surangi Samrajyam as its 203rd sovereign emperor from his inheritance and continuation of the unbroken succession of the kingdom of Surya Vamsa Surangi Samrajyam Sarvanapitha. Surya Vamsa Surangi Samrajyam, through unification with 20 other sovereign Hindu states and sovereign ecclesiastical, historical entities, became part of the United States of Kailasa, which thus became a sovereign, independent juridical state, with the SPH Nityananda Paramashivam as the sovereign. Just as how the oceanic nations like Tuvalu have safeguarded their sovereignty from the existential threat of total submersion by amending their constitution and asserting that their sovereignty will persist regardless of the loss of their territory, Kailasa, which is a sovereign continuation of 21 sovereign Hindu states and sovereign ecclesiastical historical entities, is also reviving and continuing the Kumari Kandam Hindu nations that got submerged. As per the doctrine of continuity, these facts imply that the Kailasa's statehood is recognized by international law and manifests as a natural outcome of well-established historical legal facts. Share your time, talent, and treasure. Become part of Kailasa. Sign up as an eCitizen https://kailasa.ecitizen.info.
Welcome back. As we are discussing on the 21st report of Kailasa by the United Nations, before getting into the juridical statehood of Kailasa, I want to bring the numbers to all global viewers, because Hinduism have survived million years of the history and they have also gone to thousands of years of persecutions. The fact is, even the today's neo-Hindus doesn't know this Hindu history, which is basically the Hindu Holocaust. I will bring the numbers to all of you. The Hindu civilization, which has lost for 2000 years, have gone through the massive Hindu Holocaust, which resulted in 56 Hindu nations have lost its sovereignty, and almost like 500 plus million Hindus have been massacred, and 400 plus million has been enslaved, and 160 plus million have starved to death. It has not just happened by default, because Hindus are the richest ethnic minority in everywhere. Even during 2000 years back, they are the 40% of the global GDP. This starvation was forced by the British colonization.
And before we go into the juridical statehood of Kailasa, we need to understand what destruction happened. These are not merely numbers. When we say 6 million kilometers square of land was lost, sovereign land was lost, this is not a mere barren land. Or when we say that 500 million Hindus were killed, these are not normal human beings. These are the most peaceful people on the planet Earth, which protect the planet Earth and make it beautiful to live. What has been lost is devastating. It has completely changed the planet Earth. Today, the entire crisis that we are facing on planet Earth is because of the loss of these 56 Hindu nations. Just take for an example. We have been taught, falsely brainwashed, to think that the caste system is based on Hinduism, which is a lie, because in Hinduism, each and every person is not just treated as an equal human being, he is treated as Paramashiva. Tell me which country, which place in the world you will be treated like Paramashiva. This is what we have lost by the loss of the Hindu nations.
And not only that, How many of you know that the greatest knowledge was kept in the Nalanda Hindu University, which burned for 6 months? So not only like Hindus are like rich by the wealth, they are rich by the knowledge, they are rich by the experience, and they had a solution. Hinduism has a very solution for all the world's today's problem, whether it's a global warming or wars around the world. How many of you know the fundamental principle of Kailasa is Ahimsa Paramo Dharmaka? The non-violence is the fundamental and the ultimate cosmic law. So here I'm bringing the facts that why Hindu nation is needed and what Kailasa is standing for.
And also, all these aspects have been recognized and published by the United Nations in this 21st report, which is a big achievement for all 2 billion Hindus, that the Hindu principles are getting recognized at an international stage.
And these are not just a statement given by the Kailasa or representing the sovereign entity of the Kailasa, Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. These are acknowledged by the United Nations. Let me quote it from the article itself. The lessons from the Hindu Holocaust have led to the revival of Kailasa and establishing this ancient, enlightened Sanatana Hindu civilization nations. The fundamental permissions of justice system of Kailasa is the truth of Paramashivogam, that is Paramashiva, that every being on this planet is treated as Paramashiva. So it is not only Hindus, every being, not only like humans or like even like ants, animals, plants, everyone is treated as Paramashiva as per Hinduism. So these are the policies given by Kailasa and taken by Kailasa to eradicate racism from this entire humanity, not from just from Hinduism, from the entire humanity. First is the Vasudeva Kudumbam. The whole world is my family. When this comes, where comes the wars?
Yes, and about Vasudeva Kutumbakam, many of us do not even understand what it means. Vasudha means earth, mother earth, and Kutumbakam means the family. It is a very powerful Sanskrit verse which reveals that mother, earth is my mother, and that is why we are all family. So where is the discrimination there? When every being which is living on planet earth is united by the same mother, it is these powerful cognitions of Hinduism which prevented wars for millions of years and kept the whole planet of earth.
Global Hindus are very enthusiastic and always celebrating this victory for Kailasa.
First, we need to understand when we are talking about racial discrimination, xenophobia, all these things were never part of Hinduism. So when did it start? And even today, how we are suffering? This first started in 1871 when the caste word was introduced. It is not even a word that exists in Hinduism in our entire history. It was forced upon us by the colonizing powers, and it was used to dismantle our society. The Hinduism has 4 varnashrama dharmas, the 4 paths. Whether you want to excel in life, in business, you want to excel the life in education, in scholarly works, you want to excel in life through the pursuits of your profession, or you want to excel in life through statecraft. Whatever you might choose, based on that, a customized path for your professional excellence and for your enlightenment was offered to Hinduism through the Varnashrama Dharma. But this, which is the biggest strength of Hinduism, was dismantled. How? 5,000 communities and 16,000 sub-communities of Hinduism were faultily generalized into these 4 Varnashrama Dharma, and it was forced on us, which is completely against our practice, our tradition, our scriptures.
Yes, the very caste word was not part of the Hindu system, Hindu ecosystem or Hindu lifestyle. But how it has got into the Hinduism? As we told earlier, the Mughal invasions have destroyed all the physical infrastructures of Hinduism. But to eradicate, to destroy the intellectual, the knowledge system of Hinduism, the British colonizers have brought this caste system to discriminate the people. So let me quote it from the article which is published by the United Nations. In 1871, the word caste was used by the colonial government to force its people into a framework based on the surname, appearance, facial features. The worst part is they passed a legislation as a criminal tribal act. The worst part is all the sannyasis, all the monks of the Hindus were defaultly coined as and defaultly put them under the category of criminals of the country.
Understand, every person is innocent until proven guilty. This act completely deviates from that. It recognizes a person as criminal by birth. It labels a person as criminal by his facial constructs. It labels a person as a criminal by to which community he belongs. Randomly and arbitrarily, it classifies people as criminals and punishes them. And the worst part is, it is even in act today. In the South Asian subcontinent countries, Hindus are still suffering with different versions of this act which are still there. And the worst part, it attacked our sannyasis, the sannyasis who gave their life for preserving Hindus. It was a very strategic attempt to dismantle Hinduism.
So this kind of racism and the violence against the Hindus have resulted into the illegal annexations of the lands of the sovereign indigenous Hindu nations, Hindu kingdoms, and forced their government to exile. See, when we speak about the sannyasis, okay, it is attacking just the sannyasis, but the fundamental, the roots, even today, after all these 2000 years of continuous persecution, Hinduism has stood because of the sannyasis. How many of you know what happened to the Kashi Vishwanath temple? Today we are celebrating the Kashi Vishwanath temple, but it was the Naga sadhus, there was the sannyasis who protected, who gave up their life to protect the Kashi Vishwanath temple. So when they attack sannyasis, when they by default name them as a criminal, the very sovereign rights of the nations, very sovereign rights of the Hindu kingdoms have been revoked.
And they did this in a worst cunning way. They first brought the caste system, which is not even part of Hinduism. They forced upon us this system. After that, all the wrong things which happened to our community, our culture because of this, they blamed us for that and put us into guilt, gaslighting us. And even today we suffer because of this. And this has been used to gaslight Hindus to hate themselves. This is much bigger than killing a person. It is first killing the person and making him hate himself, which is such a big damage. Like this, they dismantled the unity of the whole Hindu civilization. When the Hindus got dismantled, they took away the sovereignty and broke the nation, broke the 56 Hindu nation into fragments.
Of course, these are our history, but what is happening today? See, the Kailasa is the most vulnerable to all these decisions. They have attacked, they are the most victim for this decision. Today, Kailasa stands, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism stands for the revival of all these ancient enlightened Hindu civilization nations. By this, however, this Hindu mystic media elements narrative states that Kailasa is a cult and is a fictional nation. By uttering this, it is fundamentally violating the fundamental rights of the 2 billion Hindu diasporas. By stating a nation fictions, it is removing their fundamental rights of the 2 billion Hindu diasporas.
In fact, the CTA, the Criminal Tribes Act, is no more applied to individuals or communities. It is now being applied to the nation of Kailasa by calling it as a cult. Just because of the practice of Hinduism, just because of revival of Hinduism, just because we are the indigenous Hindus reviving the true glory of Sanatana Hindu Dharma, they call us a cult. Is this not shameful? Are they not ashamed? This is what is racism. This is what is xenophobia. None of which exist in Hinduism. How can racism exist in Hinduism? Let us see what this report has to tell about this.
Shame on the anti-Hindu medias and shame on the yellow medias, because they never stood for the truths. They always been influenced by the deep state elements who fed them with all their money, political influence, and they have continuously attacked all the Hindus, Hindu gurus who stood for the Hinduism. So what is the main reason for the attacks of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism? Because He stood for Hinduism. He stood for reviving a sovereign Hindu nation.
Now let us understand what was lost and how much was lost. We see the destruction. Let me read the report for you. The Hindu Holocaust has, for the last 2000 years, gone through a massive destruction resulting in loss of 56 Hindu nations that spanned over 6 million kilometers square of Asia. This resulted in the loss of more than 500 million lives. More than 4 million Hindus were enslaved. More than 160 million Hindus were starved to death. Thousands of temples were destroyed, and more than million Hindu educational institutions were destroyed. Libraries were burned down.
Yes, these numbers are very important, not only for the global viewers, even for the neo-Hindus, because they doesn't know about the history, because the very history has the very Hindu Holocaust. Today, whatever the history you know about Hinduism, it is fabricated by the British colonizers and this anti-Hindu medias. Let me tell the numbers once again. It is a 2000 years of persecution, and 56 Hindu nations have lost its sovereignty, and 500 plus millions has been massacred during this entire persecutions. And almost more than 4 million Hindus has been accused of rape, sex, and they have been completely dismantled from the very life itself.
But understand, all these things never happened in Hindu nations. The reason is there was no casteism, there was no xenophobia, there was no racial discrimination. How can there be any racial discrimination or casteism in Hinduism when we believe the glorious principles of Hinduism? Now let us see directly from the report what it has.
Of course, the fundamental principles taken, the measure taken by the Kailasa is implementing Paramashivam, that is, you are Paramashiva. Which nation, which community, which religion even gives this rights to everyone that you are treated as the ultimate body of the religion? But of course, we're bringing more facts to all of you. We want all the viewers to stay tuned with us. There are crisp, more details on this 21st reports by the United Nations on Kailasa. Stay tuned with us.
Around 5,000 years ago, at the end of Mahabharat War, the ancient enlightened Hindu civilization consisted of 10,000 Hindu traditions, or sampradayas, that existed in 56 Hindu nations, 200 Hindu kingdoms, 1,700 Hindu provinces that covered more than 6 million kilometers square of Asia. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, SPH, BHAGAVAN Nithyananda Paramashivamam, is the reviver of Kailasa, this ancient enlightened Hindu civilizational nation. Kailasa is an unbroken cultural, religious, historical, civilizational, and sovereign continuation and revival of multiple of these historical Hindu sovereign states and Hindu ecclesiastical entities. The unbroken continuity of these ancient Hindu nations through Kailasa results in the legal recognition of Kailasa as per the international customary law, particularly the doctrine of continuity. The international law, the doctrine of continuity, implies that upheavals and revolutions within a country, changes in government, territorial adjustments, measures taken during military occupation, or other internal transformations do not negate the existence of the country, do not affect the legal and international obligations of the country or state. The Vienna Convention on Succession of States in respect of treaties, 1978, addresses these principles of the doctrine of continuity as it outlines international law during situation of state succession or continuation. International law recognizes a state's legal personality by recognizing its identity. This perspective extends even during the period when the given state or country is annexed or occupied by a foreign power. Even in such cases, the legal personality of the state is considered to persist, enabling its subsequent re-establishment. Historical examples dating back to the 18th century include cases like Portugal and Genoa that were re-established after the Vienna Congress of 1815. More recent examples include countries such as Poland, Ethiopia, Czechoslovakia, Albania, and Austria that were re-established after World War II. Even when a nation is deprived of its territory, the nation continues to exist. Its sovereignty and international legal personality continues to persist. The Dalai Lama, as the spiritual and temporal leader of Tibet, exemplifies this principle. In 1959, the Dalai Lama was exiled and forced to flee. Despite the challenges faced, the Dalai Lama continues to advocate for the preservation of Tibetan culture, support for Tibetan autonomy on the global stage. Similarly, from 1309 to 1376, the Pope of Catholicism had been in exile in Avignon. Despite this, he was recognized as the head of state as well as head of the church, and given full privileges of the position after their return to Rome. Even in 1861, much of the papal territories had been lost, leaving the Pope with no sovereign territory.
The last segment we have spoken about the six
Now we are back and continuing on the release of the 21st report of Kailasa by the United Nations. So we have been going through the persecution that the Hindus have gone through in the last 2000 years, and particularly in the last 200 years. We understand that more than 6 million kilometers square of sovereign territory was lost. We understand 56 Hindu nations were lost. We understand 500 million Hindus were killed. But we do not understand, we still do not understand what was really lost. We need to know Hinduism. We need to understand the gifts of Hinduism to understand what we have been gone through. So let us understand directly from the report what it has to say.
Yes, the very fundamental reason why Kailasa exists, why Kailasa has to be revived, is to tell the world that humanity, the superconscious breakthrough, is available for the humanities. And here are the policies and the measures taken by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and Kailasa to eradicate the racism from the entire humanity, not just from the Hinduism, from the entire humanity. The first principle is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole world is my family. When you bring this policy in your country, how a wars can be induced between countries and countries?
So let us understand by this principle. Many of us know Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam means whole world is my family, but we need to understand the word itself, the Sanskrit word. Vasudhaiva, Vasudha, Mother Earth, Kutumbakam, the family of Mother Earth. Just by translation, you will understand how beautifully the Hindus cognize. Our ancestors had powerful cognitions about the world. Earth is my mother, and each and every being is my family. Because we are from the same mother, how can there be discrimination? How can there be fight? And that is why Hindus lived beautifully and peacefully, because we lived by these principles.
And second is the ahimsa, non-violence. See, the fundamental principle with which Kailasa has been established is ahimsa paramo dharmaha, that non-violence is the ultimate cosmic law. See, many times this non-violence has been put as the powerlessness. But how many of you know that all the fears, angers, violence, frustration, these are the powerlessness, not non-violences. Very clearly understand the world peace can be brought into the country not by wars, by only non-violence. By standing on these principles, Kailasa stands and for the United Nations for the global peace.
We have contributed to the world in extraordinary ways. We talk about the problem of xenophobia. We talk about the problem of racism. None of these problems exist in Hindu nations. How can it exist? Because we never treated people as merely equal. People are not just equal. Today, the human rights treats all people as equal, whereas Hinduism teaches us people are divine. Everyone is divine. It is much higher and powerful cognition compared to all people equal. And because of this powerful cognitions, we treated everybody as divine. We treated plants as divine. We treated animals as divine. We treated land as divine. We treated inanimate objects as divine. And because we saw Paramashiva, lived with Paramashiva in each and every aspect of this cosmos, because of that, we lived peacefully with nature. We lived peacefully with each other. These are the gifts of Hinduism which have been lost when the 56 Hindu nations were lost.
And today we are speaking about the racism. Of course, it is not just in Hinduism. The entire world faces the racism all around the world. But what is the solution Kailasa is giving? What is the solution Hinduism is giving is Advaita. The only experience, only principle which belongs to Hinduism is Advaita. How many of you know that Hindus have fundamentally rooted in the Advaita, oneness with the entire world, entire universe? Then where comes the racism?
And when we understand the destruction by the caste system, it might look superficial. But when we look at this reality, it is not just the territory was lost. It is not just the community was lost. It is not just the unity was lost. It is not just the principles were lost. It is not just the quality of life was lost. The entire ecosystem which beautifully and happily lived and contributed to the